Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Critters here on the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page, where we go live every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, unless otherwise notified. Sometimes we have cocktails with the critters in the evening. I've been live streaming here on the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page every Sunday morning for the past 5 years. And we pick an array of topics. Sometimes we have on guests, and we were supposed to have a guest on today, but we had to reschedule that last minute, which was last night. So pay attention to the events section. Let's see, let's get this off of here. Hide. Pay attention to the events section here on the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page, and that's where we post the topics of Coffee with Critters. For those that may be new, my name is Lara Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center where we live stream our services and have for several years to people all over the world interested in applied animal behavior, understanding animal behavior, training, and enrichment, no matter what the species. And you can find that on our events section here on our Facebook page, no matter what the species. So if you guys have been paying attention, I've been doing some training with an array of animals. So applied behavior analysis is our specialty. Working with animals, and I like to focus on exotics, but definitely not limited. And the reason I like to focus on exotics is because they are less resilient than many times than domestics. So I have a lot of friends that are awesome dog trainers, and I like to back up their work in their dog training using positive reinforcement and the laws of behavior. And I do that with our work, showing our work with exotics, ranging from parrots to alligators to what have you. So it's not necessarily focusing on the species that I do. I focus on the individual animal and the individual behavior. So hello, Joan, Eva, Sandy, Judith, Adrian, Bobby, Shelly, Jen, and everybody else. We have a lot going on here. So something else to pay attention to is we have an email newsletter list, an email newsletter that we send out. We try to do that at least monthly. I need to get that up to every other week. And this is the header of our newsletter. So if you see this come in your email box, you know you are receiving a newsletter from us. If you would like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do this right here on our Facebook page under Join Our Email Newsletter. So before we get started on today's topic, we're going to do a Q&A today. And pay attention, like I said, to our events page, because tomorrow I will be meeting with the awesome board certified behavior analyst Samantha Sarin. If you guys watch our Coffee with the Critters, you may be familiar with her. We are meeting tomorrow morning to do a podcast. For those of us, we're doing a podcast on understanding functional assessments. And that podcast is available to those of you that are in our online live stream learning memberships, level 1 and level 2. Level 1 for companion animals, level 2 for those more interested in the field of applied animal behavior, where we are currently showing a lot of our work with Tawny, the Eurasian eagle owl, and the steps we are taking, number 1, to create motivation, which a lot of people struggle with, identify reinforcers, which a lot of people struggle with, and reinforcers are a lot more than food. Before we even begin training an animal, we have to, I don't start interacting with an animal until I have the animal's positive reinforcers identified. And the reason, and I do that through experimenting and observation, and the reason I do that is because I never ask a behavior that I cannot positively reinforce. In order to get that behavior to happen again and continue, maintain, or increase, I need to be able to reinforce the behavior the animal gives me, especially when requested, if I want that behavior, those behaviors to continue happening. So that's what we're working on. Just one of several things we're working on in level 2 is with Tawny, the Eurasian eagle owl. You will see some of the animals that I am training currently are parrots, numerous, a kookaburra, curl-crusted aracari, Tawny, the Eurasian eagle owl, a pair of alligators, which you have, if you haven't seen, it's on my Facebook page. That was a cool video that I took the other day, my personal Facebook page, Lara Joseph. And I am currently training, what else am I training? A bobcat, starting to train a fishing cat, training a pair of lynx, training Dylan Pickles the lemurs, a pair of hyacinth macaws. I know I'm training more than that, and I can't remember. Anyways, doesn't matter. Good morning, everybody. Hey, Susie. Happy belated birthday to Susie Chen. Good evening, Sue, over there in Australia. Hey, Bob. All right. So as far as the alligator training, Jen says, yeah, no, that was a scary video. I'm assuming you're talking about the alligators. So pay close attention, because next week, well, right now I am recall training alligators, and in order for me to take the next step, I need to get inside their enclosure. And the zoo is getting ready to build me something inside the enclosure. And I said, before I go in, let me do a little more research on how I can get the behaviors I need to get once I'm inside their enclosure. So I used to have them trained to station, which means go to an area and not move until requested to do otherwise. And I did that so I could get that in their enclosure. And I have a video out there somewhere. Maybe I didn't publish it anywhere, but when you reinforce behaviors you want to see maintain or increase, and in order to get in this enclosure with alligators, I had to get them to station, which means go to an area and not move until cued to do otherwise. And I did that by teaching them to target, all of them, their front feet to the edge of their pond. If they came out of the pond, reinforcement stopped. And they quickly learned, turn around, go back into the pond, and put their feet on the edge of the pond. And that's where that is when reinforcement would be delivered. And they learned that pretty quickly. I'm ready to go back in. The zoo is ready to build me something. I'm not exactly sure what that something is. So before they spend time and money on building it for me, a week from this Tuesday, I am heading to an alligator sanctuary to get some behind the scenes, show me what they do, how they do it, so I can come up with ideas of how I'm going to incorporate this into the lives of these alligators. So some people may ask, why would you even want to do that? Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? If this is obviously mentally and physically engaging for these alligators, and I learn from it. They learn from me, and I learn from them. Training is all about teamwork. Okay. So does anybody have any questions this morning? Several things that we're working on. I've got a training team put together. out at the zoo, and that consists of Lindsay Douglas, who is one of my workers and volunteers here at the Animal Behavior Center. I need a training team because I cannot do all of this training. Well, I can do it all by myself because I have been doing it all by myself, but the bigger the training team I get, the more animals we can train. Um, the more I can move on to something else. So Lindsay and Amanda Stroud are helping me. They're part of my training team, and we're training all of these animals that I listed. Sam, there's Sam. Sam, are we still on for our podcast recording tomorrow? And then I know Sam, you're going to be a guest here with me on Coffee with the Critters in a couple of weeks, the end of this month. Sam says, Lara, it's probably wrong that I'm picturing the enclosure for you with the alligators looking like these COVID compliant plexi screens that are all over store checkouts. No, I've been in touch with several different alligator trainers, and they said I can staying better. Forget it. They said I can go ahead and go in with these alligators. But I always tell people I never do anything that makes me nervous. Because if I'm nervous, I'm not sure what the animal's going to do, how it's going to behave. And if I'm nervous, it means that I haven't learned the behavior of that animal yet. And I continue to learn and understand that animal through training. So, Joan, I knew you were somewhere overseas. You're in Denmark. Okay. I was trying, Jen. Jennifer Mauger, the awesome Jennifer Mauger. Oops, that's not Jennifer Mauger. This is. Alligators are awesome. Helping them live their best life is very motivating. Yeah, and I have somebody coming in with me in 2 weeks, flying, or I don't know if she's flying or driving, to do a day with the trainer with me. And I know this person trains a couple different species of animals, but we learn more when we train outside of the species in which we're comfortable. We can really fine-tune our training techniques, approaches. Hello, Sylvia. Understanding behavior, but more so understanding the laws of behavior and how it's applicable to all species. Somebody just messaged me yesterday saying my animal is doing something for no reason. And I said, I will disagree with you. Your animal, there is a reason. We don't ever give behavior that happens for no reason. There is always a reason behind the behavior of an animal. And a lot of times behaviors such as abnormal repetitive behaviors, stereotypical behaviors. A lot of animals will do this for numerous different reasons. And we're getting ready to launch our webinars where are we doing this? In level 2 on understanding abnormal repetitive behaviors in all species of animals. This is a 16-hour presentation. It's a 2-day presentation I gave in Montreal last year that I'm breaking down into 1-hour segments. I love working with animals that have abnormal repetitive behaviors because a lot of times those abnormal repetitive behaviors begin out of frustration or the animal lacking something in their environment, not being able to sometimes I hate using the word communicate, but animals communicate through behavior, and we can understand that communication and that behavior through training. And that is one of several primary reasons why I train. Another primary reason why I train is to empower the animal. You can find out more about our webinars our level 1, level 2 membership, our projects, which are all species specific, and our memberships and our projects are designed to be combined together, but not necessary. You can find that out more about those services on the animalbehaviorcenter.com. Let me take a look, see if anybody has any questions. Okay, Samantha, you said, yes, we're on board for tomorrow, so I'm heading to the zoo right after this. I'll shoot you a message tonight, and we can get together and talk about our recording of the podcast for those who are in our memberships on functional assessments. And Sam will be on later with us on Coffee with the Critters. I'm not going to tell you the topic because I believe I remember what it was. Okay, somebody, yes, Jennifer, I hope you're doing well. I believe Jennifer's responding to, we understand behavior better through spreading our information and our training out among different species. And every day I go into the zoo, I have an idea of what animals I'm going to train, but sometimes I never know until I get there. Okay, so Sue had a question. Let me scroll back. Give me your questions on if it has anything to do with animal behavior, training, and enrichment, and I will address that. So Sue says, I'm about to introduce my female eclectus to a 3-year-old male that needs rehoming. If Priscilla doesn't bond straight away, should I take this new boy on? That's not a tough question. It's going to be a long answer. And it depends on a lot. When I'm introducing two animals, don't expect anything to happen right away, Sue. It may not. A lot of times I will introduce animals. We do this a lot here at the center. I will introduce animals in 2 separate rooms, as you guys may or may not have seen here at the Animal Behavior Center. When we bring in a new animal, most of the time, not all the time, when we bring in an animal here for training or observation, we usually put it in another room that the majority of our animals are not in. This room has a lot of windows, and it doesn't have to be done like this because a lot of people don't have this opportunity. But I will put the animal in another room and then observe how that animal interacts with other animals through the windows. A lot of times if I see animals go up to a window and stare into the other room where I am a lot and the other animals are a lot, I just get a good read on behavior. What does it look like? Do they come up to the windows all the time? What behaviors are they exhibiting when they come up to the window? Because these could be behaviors, if it's fear, those behaviors could be numerous. The animal could stay far away from the windows. I watch how the animal interacts with vocalizations from the animals on the other side of the window. If it comes up to the window, it could, why? Why is it coming up to the window? Because it wants to see the animals, because it wants to interact with the animals. Is it showing signs of being defensive and wanting to protect itself from the other animals? I never expect an introduction to go quickly. I never expect anything, period. Sometimes I do, but I put those expectations on a back burner. And then what I do is observe. I will begin interacting with the animal. If you can see, hear, smell, or feel that animal, you are training that animal, whether you realize it or not. The key question is, what exactly are you training? So Sue, my best answer for you is this is why I like to foster, even, and I do some of that. I don't do a lot. I will admit I'm a huge foster failure, but I'm also not a huge foster failure. There are a lot of animals that have come here for months. Those of you who've been following the work that I do know that, thanks Karen, know that we have kept animals here for long periods of time, such as Molly, the ring-tailed lemur, was here for 9 months. We just had Sunshine here for a year. And I'm able to identify, yes, this animal is interested in being with other animals. Yes, this animal is interested in being with people. What people, how many people, what kind of animals, how many animals, what do stressors look like. So I would, Sue, don't expect anything to happen quickly. And another key thing is, do you really understand what you're seeing? Do you really understand the behaviors you're seeing? Because introducing two animals can be a pretty dangerous situation to the animal, to the other animal, and to you. And how I understand what I'm seeing is through training. When I target train an animal, that is usually one of a few of the beginning behaviors I begin teaching. Target training means teaching an animal to touch a particular object with a body part on cue, like Key West parrot mug. Because when I'm target training an animal, I'm not necessarily only looking, say, the alligators are target trained, all my parrots are target trained, most primates I work with are target trained, and I teach them to touch their nose to a stick, to an object, to the ball at the end of that stick on cue. I am not only looking at their nose or their beak touching the target stick. I'm reading, what do their ears look like? What do the ear placement look like? What are their eyes looking at? Are their teeth showing? Is their beak opening? Because all of those things happening together tell me and help me learn whether this animal is comfortable or not. Nancy says, Nancy down there in Key West, eclectuses do not bond as pairs like other parrots. In the wild, the girls hang out together and the boys do the same. In the wild, I think the females also spend a lot of time by themselves in nest sites, protecting nest sites for up to 9 months. I've learned that through the awesome Bonnie Zimmerman at Indonesian Parrot Project. Okay, Karen says Nita Moore has a question. Nita says, how can I train Angel not to attack the dogs? She will try it from inside her cage as well. Nita, what kind of animal is Angel? So, the second thing I'm going to ask you is, what does attack look like? Okay, that's another thing I will ask people a lot of times when they say my animal is being aggressive. I will ask, what does aggressive look like? Because a lot of times, in most times, we can say we might be able to accurately identify aggressive and where the animal is not comfortable. A lot of behaviors labeled as aggressive can also be labeled as fear. Fear, okay? Animals in cages have less choices, okay? So imagine yourself being in a cage in an environment where you have no control over anything outside of that cage, outside of those cage bars. Those cage bars are restricting choices. So Nita says, Angel is an umbrella cockatoo, and what does attacking look like? She says, wings up and chasing. Well, first of all, I would make sure that situation doesn't happen again, because the longer it happens, the stronger it's likely to get. This is called that period of time that these desired or undesired behaviors happen or continue to happen is called history of reinforcement. So Nita, the longer the wings up and chasing happens, the stronger it's going to get. The stronger it's likely to get or maintain. All right. And the longer that history of reinforcement, now you have some counter conditioning to do, which means retrain. And I always try to prevent any kind of counter conditioning, because once an animal learns a particular behavior, gets a result, they know it. You always hear me say, once somebody learns 2 + 2 = 4, you don't forget it. Okay. Once I learn a particular behavior gets me a response that I want, I am likely to keep doing that behavior to get that response that I want. If it means to get you to go away and that's the response that I want, then I'm going to continue to do it. The concern with counter conditioning is once the behavior starts, say it's an undesired behavior, such as this, once you want it to change, you can get it to change. You can get it to change and you can train it, you can teach it to change. But once the reinforcer, that ratio strain becomes so strong, with not getting a reinforcer in time for the alternate behavior, it's likely to revert back to the behavior that it has learned earns it reinforcement. Make sense? So Nita says, you're very welcome, Sue. She came to me with this behavior 7 years ago, and I've continually redirected her. If she's continuing to do it, maybe this has to do with schedules of reinforcement, intermittent schedules of reinforcement. Once in a while, the undesired behavior it happens and it's reinforced. If Angel continues to chase the dogs, Nita, let me ask you this. What is the response of the dogs? What did the dogs do when Angel chases them with her wings up? Because she came to you with this behavior. So Angel had dogs in her previous home? If so, you said she came to you with this behavior 7 years ago. If that's the case, now you have 7 years of you have to redirect a 7-year history of reinforcement of the undesired behavior. And in my experience, the longer the undesired behavior is reinforced, the longer it's going to take you to train it. But in my experience, only, you can change it, and it doesn't take. I often don't see it take near as long for it to change than how long of time it took to reinforce in the first place. Yes, Jen. So I had asked Nita, what do the dogs do when Angel chases her? And she says the dogs run from her. So there is likely the desired behavior that she's earning that's reinforcing her chasing. And Jen, the awesome Jen Hirakawa from Iowa, the awesome dog trainer, says the dogs run, and that is reinforcing to Angel. And it could be The running of the dogs could be reinforcing to Angel, and a lot of other little specifics could be reinforcing. So if Angel doesn't want the dogs near her, and this plays into our functional assessments that we're getting ready to dive into tomorrow in my recording with Samantha Sarah on functional assessments, all behavior serves a purpose. So if you don't want Angel chasing the dogs, don't allow the situation to happen in the first place. And if you need to control Angel chasing the dogs, then you need to have control over the dogs. That's where I would start, Nita. I would start training those dogs to come to you on cue. When I give those dogs a cue, boom, I want them to come to me as soon as I say it. And you don't necessarily start that right in front of Angel's cage. Maybe start that, say, Angel's in the living room, start training the dogs in the kitchen. Come when I say this word. Come when I say this word. And you can get a rock solid recall through training. Something else you can teach is teach the dogs to target. Teach the dogs to target their nose to your hand. Okay? I want you to touch your nose to my hand on cue. So then the hardest part for you, Nita, is going to be paying attention. The easy part is going to be changing this behavior. The hard part is going to be for you to pay attention. A lot of people don't pay attention because it's not convenient. And that's when undesired behaviors are learned and continue to exist. So you need to pay attention to when the undesired behavior is likely to occur. What do the dogs do when they get ready to go in the room with Angel? Whatever they do, that could be looking that direction. Ears go up. Those are subtle antecedents. Those are subtle cues to let us know this undesired behavior is likely to happen. So ask the dogs to touch their nose to your hand. If you want a behavior to change, you need to replace it with another behavior. Jen, go ahead and ask your question. You need to replace it with another behavior. You don't want the chasing to occur. What do you want to happen? Prevent the chasing from happening. So you can do that through training your dogs to touch their nose to your hand, target their nose to your hand. You can control an animal through training. You can control an animal through teaching a target. Teach the dogs to go to a station, which means go to an area and don't move until I ask you to do otherwise. One thing you will never hear me say is a command. I never command an animal to do anything. I will cue or request an animal to do something, because a command is a form of negative reinforcement, which means do it or else. I command you to do this. If you do not do this, then something is going to happen that you don't like. And so you are going to do what I command you to do to escape avoid a consequence of not doing it. That negative reinforcement I want as far away from me as possible. Okay, so Nita, what do you want your animals to do? And what do you want the dogs to do instead? Train them to do that other behavior. Jen Hirakawa says, what is your opinion on the rate of reinforcement and criteria of reinforcement for reptiles that you are training so that they don't decide to come off station to find out if you are a target? Great question, Jen. So my rate of reinforcement when I'm first teaching, so I'm teaching the alligators to station, and a station is a target with duration. I want both hands targeted to the edge of the pond for a period of time. So when I'm first And I have this on video from when I first started. So my rate of reinforcement, when I'm first starting to train an animal, I need to teach an animal contingency, which means if this happens, then this happens. And I teach contingency in the beginning through high rates of reinforcement. So with these alligators, I was chucking pieces of meat. When they saw me coming and I would give them their cue to pay attention to me, they would turn around in the pond and they would start walking up the side of the pond. Okay. Think about this with your dog, with your bird, with your whatever, with your rabbits. They would start so they would swim to me. And as soon as that foot would hit the side of the pond, because I was standing probably 15 feet away, so my accuracy has to be spot on. And my accuracy was spot on with tossing Cheerios to a primate that I was training. A lot of my training with these type of animals is off contact in the beginning, high rates of reinforcement. So as soon as that foot would hit the edge of the pond, I would bridge. And that bridge for me is good. Very rarely, well, never do I use a clicker. I can't tell you the last time I have used a clicker, because a clicker is a bridge, and I'm not against using a clicker for training. Use what works for that animal. I have been in certain situations where I'm like, a click might be a really distinctive sound that helps relay this message really quick. A bridge is a sound or signal that tells the animal that particular behavior of your foot on the edge of the pond is what's earning you this, okay? So it bridges that period of time. It's a sound, and I use the word good. So as soon as that foot hits, I say good, boom, and it bridges that period of time between this and by the time the food gets to the alligator. So before that alligator could even get the second foot up, I'm like, good, boom. So I'm standing there going, good, boom, boom, with a good in between each time. So high rates of reinforcement. And then as that alligator starts coming out of the water, there's no more good. There's no more boom. There's no more food. Okay. This is one of several ways an animal learns contingency. If this, then this. So they start coming out of the water, nothing happens. What I'm paying attention to at that time, I was training 4 or 5, I think of 4 alligators at a time. So what I was paying attention to were what were the other 3 doing while that one is coming out of the water. So when I'm training numerous animals at once, which I love because it's that challenge for me that is my reinforcer. So I'm paying attention. What are the other 3 doing? And I think the one was coming out of the water going to the left. The other 2 were still sitting there. So I'm going, good, boom, 2 hands, boom, throwing the meat chunks to the 2 that are still stationing at the edge of the water. These 2 are coming out and starting to wander, all right? All I'm doing is I'm using a rate of reinforcement as well, Jennifer, on these other 2 that are out of the water. Do you know what it is? Sam? Anybody know what that rate of reinforcement is on these 2 coming out of the water? And wandering, what wandering is in this particular situation is they're looking for reinforcers and just starting to experiment with behavior that's earning that reinforcement. So that rate of reinforcement that I'm using on the 2 alligators coming out of the water is, or I'm sorry, scheduled reinforcement is extinction. Extinction means ignoring. And extinction, I can't think of one instance where I use extinction by itself, which means, correct, Eva, 0. Extinction alone, extinction means ignoring. So what I'm doing is I'm paying attention to these two wandering around, but they are getting zero reinforcement. And they're observing, they're looking around, and they're seeing that food is being delivered in high rates, Jennifer, to the two that are sitting still at the edge of the pond. So it didn't take long, and I see the one near me turn around and go back into that pond. So when he goes, I don't want to, this is where I got to be careful, because I don't want to bridge and reinforce the behavior of him going back into the pond. Yes, Sam, continuous and high rates for the ones in the pond. When I see this one, I don't want to bridge and reinforce the one for going in the pond, because if I do, then I'm reinforcing the behavior of going into the pond. In order to go into the pond, they need to come out of the pond. And I don't want them to come out of the pond. So what I'm doing is I'm watching the alligator that goes into the pond while I'm still going, good, boom, and delivering reinforcement to these two. Soon as it goes into the pond, it's got to turn around to accurately see the reinforcement coming. And as soon as those feet touch the edge of the pond, good, boom, 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 high rates, boom, boom, boom. And I'm just chucking food at those three. While this one is still wandering, and he's going to learn reinforcement isn't happening. So he slowly went back in, and then I'm good. Boom, 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 boom. And I just start over. Boom, 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 boom. That higher rate, Jennifer. And then I start adding in the different schedules of reinforcement, okay, to create duration. Good, boom, boom, boom. And then I'll start going 1, 2, 3 in my head. Good, boom, 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 boom. Makes sense? And then beginning stages, high rates of reinforcement. And then I start slowing it down. And then I start slowing it down even more. And then I may mess around with, sorry, just got a text from the Zoom. Then I may mess around with the 4 main factors of reinforcer effectiveness. Big chunk. Big chunk, like all my sound effects. That teaches contingency. If one comes out of the pond, extinction, nothing's happening. That is communication. You hear me say, I won't use extinction alone. I will not use ignoring alone. I may use many different things, but differential reinforcement is one. This behavior is extinguished, while this one earns high rates of reinforcement in the beginning. Make sense? Does that answer your question, Jen? Let's see. I think Karen said somebody else had a question, but Jennifer says, right, I would rather have all 42 teeth of a dog than trust a reptile to rely on the contingency and criteria. I think I might have a bias for the alligators with a lot of fear. That's a great point, Jen. So, fear? Where do I start with that? You've heard me say this already once. If I'm nervous, I don't do it. If I'm nervous, it's because I don't understand that animal. So start where you're not nervous. And I always told people, like, I was just working with somebody the other day, and I was like, you ready to work with this? And they're like, yeah. They were showing me behaviors such as this, and eyes wide, be specific, okay? What does nervous look like? This, eyes wide, teeth starting to show, heavy breathing, and her going, yes. And then she's like, I think so. And I was like, whoa, stop. What do you mean you think so? And she's like, well, I'm a little nervous. And I said, then let's not do this. And she's like, no, but I really want to do this. It's like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Let's start where you're comfortable. And comfortable usually starts with distance, off contact, which means you're not even touching the animal. So where are you comfortable? And this is where a lot of people with birds who have fear of birds, most people that come here to my center, I have numerous animals, but I love birds. I try to hide it, but I think I suck. Most people that come here are afraid of birds. A lot of dog trainers that come here for workshops or a day with a trainer are afraid of birds. So, yeah. So I start at distance, or I start with, I'm afraid of birds. What does that mean? I need to know exactly what that means. So I don't usually start them out working with a turkey vulture or a Moluccan cockatoo. Okay. When I had the budgies here, I would start them off with little budgies, budgerigar parakeets. Okay. Because if you make a mistake, I never want an animal to bite me, but the smaller the beak, the more comfortable people are. But likely, before they even bite you, if you give them choice and opportunity, they're just going to fly up and away. All right. Cello, who we miss dearly, was a fabulous teacher, because he's not going to bite you, but he would give you, the more confident he'd just puff out his chest and go, ooh, and punch you with his wing. I love that. You didn't like something, the more confident he came, he'd come up sideways next to you and just go bam and hit you. I was like, I'd rather have that than the beak, because that little tiny beak can grab on pretty hard too. If you're nervous, don't do it. So take out the nervousness. Where is that? Okay. Jen says, I think I'm going to drive up so I can watch you do some protective training. Jen, come up here and work with me. I've got somebody who I'm surprised isn't on here coming in from Pennsylvania next week to work with me for a day. And I'm going to ask her, she's been to several workshops of mine. I don't ask people necessarily, what species do you want to work with? A lot of times in the beginning, I've always wanted to work with a lemur. I've always wanted to work with this. I will say, what behaviors? What challenges do you have? And then they'll be telling me, they may say, oh, my dog or my parrot or whatever zoo animal I'm working with. And in my head, I'm thinking of scenarios. I'm thinking, what animal here can we put you on that's going to be a great teacher to fine tune your approaches? Jen, does that help you on your question of rates of reinforcement? If I am nervous of an animal, and sometimes I am, I'm now working with a pair of lynx, Siberian lynx. Okay. And what I'm doing with them, I don't know these cats. They came from another zoo. So people may tell me they don't like men or they're nervous of people. I'm like, what does nervous mean? What does that look like? So what I do is go to commissary where they're making food prep, and I'm saying, what is the lynx diet? And they will tell me, and I will say, what do they prefer? And they will tell me which meats they prefer. And then I'll ask, because a lot of times they're like, well, they like, I don't know, I'm just pulling it because I'm just starting to work with them. Let's say they like elk. I'll be like, okay, when you feed them elk, is elk coming out of the cage? And they say, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, what do you feed them that's not coming out of the cage? Let's just say beef. And I'll be like, oh, so beef goes in, beef doesn't come out. Elk goes in, elk comes out. I'm thinking they prefer the beef. So what am I going to do when I go in and train? You get elk in your cage. Okay. They're like, where's the beef? And I'm like, woohoo, right here. And I will feed with tongs. So if I make a mistake, I don't miss a finger. All right. And then what I'm doing is, how quick do they take that beef off the tongs? And I'm feeding them chunks, Jennifer, so I can feed a lot. And it takes a lot of beef this size before a lynx gets hungry. And I would like to tell you how much they weigh, but I don't know, because that is what I'm getting ready to train them, is to step on the scale. So I am training them off contact through, I've got protection between me and I don't have to touch them. What I'm doing is identifying how they're eating and and I'm learning. They come up and they grab that food, and maybe I live stream this in level 2. They grab that food, and I can't do it here. I'm going to blow snot all over my screen because I can't replicate what they do. They breathe out through their nose hard, and then they sniff it back in, and then boom, they take that food, and they make some vocalizations when they're taking it. And I'm watching, what are your ears doing? What are your eyes looking at? Let me see that little nub of a tail of yours. What is it doing? Is it flicking? Or is it staying still? Is it kind of erect? What is it doing? Because I'm identifying what motivation looks like. Jen says, it is just the fear of the reptile. I get the training process. I was wondering how much extra you do to ensure that the reptile doesn't find targeting you as reinforcement. I watch how they act when I put the food in their mouth. I will test them with my body parts on the other side of the enclosure, see how they act, see what their tail does, watch how their feet move, watch where their head goes, because for me, it's hard for me to read their eyes. So if it's hard for me to read their eyes, I'm watching everything else. All right. I did get in their enclosure about a week and a half ago. I filled their pond and I watched what they did, and they sat there. But the other day, as you saw, they have learned my voice, because when I'm training them in front of a group of people, I'm talking, and I'm talking to the people behind me. I'm not talking to the alligators. I'm sitting there I'm communicating with the alligators through my training, but I'm talking to the people behind me. So what we saw in that video the other day is all I was doing was talking, and those alligators are following me. Is that what I want? Because I'm getting ready to go in their enclosure. And if I start talking and they start following me, this is why I need to go to that alligator sanctuary, which I am going a week from this Tuesday. So stay tuned. Julie says, what do you mean targeting her? And Jen says, chasing me. I don't want them. And there's a difference between coming to me and stopping in front of me versus coming to me and keep coming to me. I want you to stop at some point. Does that make sense? So Pam Hobby is on here and says, at the rescue, over time, I get to know the animal, and interacting with them becomes comfortable and natural. Not sure what natural mean. I would ask you, be specific. Natural. What does natural mean? Then I'm not nervous. Feeding them is a great way for me to initiate contact, prepping their food, etc. Yeah, I just had somebody contacting me yesterday about an animal that will chase, jump, bite, lunge near food dishes, resource guarding. Okay, well, everything I've talked about in this Q&A is applicable to all species. Rates of reinforcement, extinction, identifying reinforcers. The animal is always the one that identifies reinforcers. Did I say motivation? Replacement behaviors, counterconditioning. So You can find out more about what we do on our website and find out more about our memberships and our projects and our services, which are many. Pay attention. We got a lot of, I know I keep saying something big is coming. It's coming. And I have yet to reveal it to the public. Pay attention. You can find more about what we do on our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. And you can always contact me personally. I answer all my emails at Lara at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Jennifer, come up and work with me. I will teach you how amazing alligators are. So for those of you that want to know more about our services, we have our level 1 for companion, level 2 for people wanting more, understanding more about applied animal behavior, where we live stream every week with numerous different animals. People who are interested in our species specific, such as the pig project, the parrot project. Also, oops, get off of here. Also, something we have that I never bring attention to is we have an array of different webinars, pre-recorded webinars. Understanding behavior webinar. You can go to our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Julie, get up here too. Understanding behavior, where we go into identifying reinforcers, identifying aversives, what is positive punishment, positive reinforcement, target training, stationing. If this is a big bang for your buck. We also have species-specific webinars, such as addressing aggression with your pig, which seems to be pretty common. And one of our most popular, creating outdoor aviaries enclosures. And we have other ones on teaching animals to forage, understanding reinforcers and reinforcement. Yeah, and pending on what happens with the pandemic, if you sign up to our email newsletter list, boom, I'll let you know when workshops are ready to go. But for now, we are doing small spaced out training through things like a day with the trainer, a referral program. A lot of people and rescues have a hard time affording things such as online consultations. So I've created the referral program for them, but not just them, which is for every 5 people you refer to us that sign up for a membership or a project, I give you a free 1-hour consultation. And with that being said, thanks, Julie, says she loves the aviary webinar. Thank you. Sam, I'll be in touch with you tonight. And for those of you in our level 1 and level 2, Sam and I will be recording your next podcast, I believe on functional assessments tomorrow. All right. Take care, everybody. Happy Sunday. Be safe.